So today what we're going to do is a kettle sour. So collected the wort, we've already done the mash. It's just Pilsner and wheat, and we've brought it, mashed it for 60 minutes at 150. And now what we've done is we've collected the wort into the kettle. I'm brewing the bag, so I've just strained it out and boiled it for 15 minutes and then brought it down to between 95 and 100. And now what we're going to do is we're going to check the pH, and we need the pH to be between, well, I'm going for 4.5. And to do that, what we do is we have a pH meter. And this is the pH meter here. So I've already got the buffer solution in there, and I've already made sure that it's accurate. So what we do is we put it in the wort, and we see where the wort's at the moment. So at the moment we're at 5, pH of 5. So what we need to do now is bring this pH down using lactic acid. That's what I'm going to use anyway, lactic acid. And all we do is we put a little bit in, and I just do a cap at the time. It comes down quick and comes down slow, and then all of a sudden it usually comes down quick. So you sort of sneak up on it. And you would just put a cap in at a time like that and give it a stir. Okay, we just stir it. And you don't need a lot of this pH, this lactic acid, to get the pH down. But it's better to sneak up on it than overshoot it. We'll check it again, see where we're at. 4.7. 4.7. See, it doesn't really use a lot, which is great. I've had this lactic acid for a long time, and I've still got lots left. Granted, I haven't done a lot of Kettle Souring, but I haven't had one screw up yet. Hopefully it's not it. We'll stir, and let's see where we're at again. Right on 4.5. Okay, so right on 4.5. So I took 2 caps from a pH of 5 to get it down to 4.5. So yeah, it doesn't take much at all to get it down to 4.5. And then when you're finished with it, give it a clean, and then put it back in the storage solution. Yeah, just in a little container like this, because you don't use much of the storage solution otherwise, because you don't have to keep getting storage solution every time it gets dry and crusty. Alright, so I'm going to take the camera off, and then I'll get a different angle, and I'll show you how we cover it up over after we put the lactobacillus in. Okay, so the wort is at the moment sitting on 102, 103. So the yeast we're using is the 5335. You can also use 2 handfuls of Pilsner malt. That works well, and then also Potbelly peach juice as well. I'm sticking with the tried and true, so I'm just going to use this. So I'm going to pitch the yeast straight into here, well within temperature for this yeast, or this lactobacillus, should I say. I'm going to just let it do its thing. I'm really not going to stir it, and now we're going to put Glad wrap over on top. I've got the heat probe still running in here because the element will be running for the whole time. So this is the trickiest bit there is, to get the Saran wrap or Glad wrap, depending on which part of the continent it is, in, without all screwing up. So this is what I do. I just put it right across the top, and then I'll slowly bring it all the way down. But at least got to try and make about 4 or 5 inches of overhang, and I'll purposely pull it to one side first, and then move it out. And if you get it in there without any air too. So that's why it's better to do one side first, just like that, and bring it up the sides as well. So it just helps keep the air out. I go both ways instead of just one way. I'll do a couple of ways, just to make sure I get it all right. But yeah, this is the way I've found it. It works best. I do both sides to start with, and then make sure they've got no air bubbles as well. It's pretty important to make sure there's no air bubbles in there, and you can sort of just pull it away from one bit when you're pressing it across the surface, and the air bubble will come right out one side. And I like to make sure it's good so that you can sort of feel it, and it's really weird, but that's the way it goes. And then I just put another one across the other way. So where the probe goes down, that's where I'm going to be testing the pH from if I can't get any out of the tap. But the way you want to do it is open up your tap and drain a little bit from the bottom, because that way you won't put any more oxygen into the top of the wort. And then the little bits, if you want to, because that bit doesn't look right to me over there, so I'm going to run another bit. You can't have enough because it all comes out in one sheet, so it's not really hard to get it out. So you might as well make sure you've got enough. Yeah, and then just press it all around the edges like that. And then when you're happy, you know what? I'm going to put another bit there because that's just what I do. Just over where that temperature probe is, right there, and see how you go. And if you screw it up, just take it out, do it again. That's it. Okay, so now I'm going to put the lid on this, and it's going to sit here with the ink bird just going for. I'm going to check it at 12 hours, and then I'm going to check it depending on how much it's lowered from 12. It's at 4.5 right now, and then just gauge it. But we're looking at 24 hours, I'd say. It's going to be around 100 the whole time, so it might be earlier, but now's when I'll give it 7 hours at 12 hours, and I'll check it and check it and check it and make sure I don't overshoot. And I'm looking for 3.4 is where I want it. This is going to be a peach sour. So the peach is a little tart in itself, a passion fruit sour. So the passion fruit's a little tart in itself. So I don't want it sour, I just want it tart sour, and then use the passion fruit to give it that sour. Anyway, so that's my quick guide on how to kettle sour, and then we're going to come back and we're going to check it over and over. So I'll see you then. This should be a hand model. All right, cheers. Time for a drink, it's hot here. Okay, so just moving on with the kettle sour up to the next stage now. So we're 3 days in. I put some Pilsner in there this morning to help get it moving, because the lactobacillus wasn't, I don't feel it was moving quick enough. It's effervescing, I think you would call it at the moment. It's well on the way, and it is down at the moment. Now it's 3.5. Okay, so now what we do, the kettle sour's finished. I don't want it to get any sourer than this. I'm going to try a little bit as well, which you know, got to take caution when you do that, because this is could have bad bugs in it. But I'm going to take one on the chin for science, and boil it, and to kill all the bacteria in there, and then you start your normal boil. Put your hops in and move through until fermentation. And the temperature at the moment in here is 95 degrees. Okay everybody, I'm not going to keep it for too much longer. I just wanted to maybe let's give you some cliff notes for some things that I didn't include in the first part of the video. One is you never know when it's going to get to the low pH you're going for. So I've done this 3 or 4 times now, and it's always worked out within reason, around 24 to 48 hours. This time it was 72, and that's after 2 handfuls of Pilsner malt in there to help promote it. To get it down, it wasn't moving. So it finished off last night. I went to check it before bed, and you saw the footage. It was like effervescing. It was like off, and that was 11 p.m. last night, midweek. So not really pleasurable for me. So it was like 2 a.m. by the time I finished the boil and put it to rest in the firm fridge with the yeast. And I used a USO 5 because yeah, anyways, it finishes off very clean, and that's where I want this one to be. So that's one thing to consider. It's a rough journey. You never really know when it's going to end. Some other cliff notes I'll give you. So usual grist bill for a sour, it usually consists of about 60% Pilsner malt, 40% white wheat. But you can use 2-row malt, doesn't have to be Pilsner. And some of the other grains you can use is Vienna, of course. Some light crystals, 20 lever bond or lower. Typically stay away from the darker grains, because the dark grains will give you some off flavors and some nutty characteristics during the kettle sour, and you know that's not really typical for this style. Go with a lower mash temperature of 150 and it'll promote more fermentability. So that's why you would use a lower mash temperature. Remember, pre-acidification is what you're after of your wort before you cool it and inoculate it. So as soon as I do my mash, I get it in there, it's still sitting at 150. I'll check the pH then, and then will use. There's a few things you can use to lower your pH at that stage. I use just the standard food grade acid, but you can use a few different sorts and some grains as well. But typically I'll just use lactic acid because I've used lactic acid for a long time and it works really well. Phosphoric is another acid you can use there as well. But remember to get it down, and the range you can go between for lowering the pH to start before you lacto it is 3.7 to 4.5. It's a huge range. I go with 4.5. It seems to work really well, and it promotes usually the lactic acid reaction pretty quick. Other things you can remember when you've got the lacto in, when you inoculate it, or you keep it between 85 and 115. Preferably lower than 115, but I've heard that you can go up to 115. I shoot between 95 and 105, and I don't seem to have any problems there at all. Then definitely use your zinc sulfide or your yeast nutrient at the end of the boil. You just run through the boil, and then your pitching of yeast as you would normally do, but you typically want to pitch a little more yeast. You want to over pitch your yeast. A couple other things: don't yeast bank. Don't try and use the yeast cake again, or pitch onto the yeast cake. Not a good idea. Can go anywhere. I've never done it, but I've never heard a good story about anybody trying to reuse a yeast cake. But definitely, if you've got the means and you're going to do some more sours, sour harvest or sour bank, let's say. So you take off some of the sour before you boil it, whatever you think you're going to need, and then you can store that and reuse that to inoculate or your next brew of sour. And then you're going to keep, it's going to change, like it's going to evolve, but it's going to be something you can rely on. So I hope that helps out, and please like the video and subscribe if you like it, and I'll be hitting you up with some more things. I'm having a beer here, it's pretty hot, and after the late night last night. This is a mango IPA that I did, like a New England IPA base, a light one though, and pitched it onto some mangoes into the secondary, and it's beautiful for a day like today. And I actually sent some of this out, so I hope the guys that got it enjoy it. It's a first run, it's a work in progress, but it's very drinkable. Hope you've enjoyed it. Remember, subscribe. See you soon.